So I am beyond excited to welcome to the show my good friend Claude Silver, Chief Heart Officer of VaynerX, and James Orsini, the president of the Sasha Group. I know we're probably still waiting for James to get in here. Knowing him, he's got 17 people lined up ready to ask him a question. So Claude, I'm going to welcome you to the show right now. It is so good to see your face.
Paul, it's amazing to see you. Thank you for having me, everyone. It's just great to be here.
It's completely my pleasure. So just so you know, we have a lot of dealers and industry partners on the show today, many of them leaders, many of them in management. They're all managing teams. And one of the things, Claude, that you taught me, whether that was at our first time we ever met, and most of you probably don't know, but the foundation, I personally talk about this concept of clarity. That was actually born the first time I met Claude in her office, and she does what she does, and she listened to what I'm saying. She says, I don't think you understand you just said this, but what I heard you say is you like it when you do something that helps people find clarity in what they're trying to say. And the light bulb went off, and I said, this is probably the start of something, and it never left me. But one of the things that Claude is specifically great at is listening to people and reading between the lines of what they might be thinking or feeling. And she leads a massive team. Gary Vaynerchuk said he brought Claude on so he could scale himself and his desire to really be a champion of people. So Claude, that doesn't do any justice to what you actually do on a day in, day out basis. So maybe you could just give us a quick intro to kind of where you came from in the professional world and what you're doing right now.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Paul. I still get chills when you talk about that day. That was amazing. And I love the hat.
Thank you.
So I found my way into this wide world of advertising and advertising agencies by really just taking a left turn somewhere down in 1998. And I got into this world of digital marketing and digital advertising, really was training to be a psychotherapist. So really had no business doing this advertising world, but the business was very, very good and kind to me. I was able to always play to my strengths, and that was my appreciation of human behavior and being a champion for people. And one thing led to another, and I was working on a lot of very large brands that we all kind of pick up in Walgreens and CVS right now, and was working at a lot of very large advertising agencies, both in America and the UK, working on really how to give the consumer, the end consumer, really peace of mind with a product. Mm-hmm. In many ways, and you and I have spoken about this, I really see it as hospitality. I see advertising as hospitality, and I see what I do on a daily basis as hospitality. One thing led to another, and I met Gary Vaynerchuk when I was living in London, and he brought me over to New York, VaynerMedia at the time. We didn't have a VaynerX. And I started as an SVP, and I ran the Unilever account, CPG, and again, Dove soap and all of those things that we shop for. And it dawned on me a year in that I was really no longer interested in the advertising of it, but my love and my desire for building people and creating strong teams that were rooted in a sense of belonging and purpose was really what I was here and I was put on this earth to do. And I went to Gary, and one thing led to another. And about, I'd say 9 months later, we created this role called the Chief Heart Officer. In many ways, it is a Chief HR Officer or Chief People Officer at other places. I didn't have any formal HR training, and so I've been a student of that world. And I really see, in many ways, it's very simple for me. Human beings are the central operating system of any organization, company, dealership, and the heart obviously is the central operating system of a human being. So there's a lot of synergy there. And mm-hmm. I work for 800 people every single day, and my job is to bring as much clarity as I can, connection, and really help them spread their wings to be their best selves through teaching both soft skills and hard skills.
That's a great summary, and 800 people are relying on you to do that. And I know a lot of people here manage organizations that size, and that comes, different sizes come with different challenges, and you've kind of experienced all of them on the way through. That's great. I was just told that James is actually on the call. James, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I could see you as well.
Oh my gosh, I can see you. I just couldn't see you. I just saw Claude. Now I see James. James, it is so great to see you. You've been a mentor to me in so many ways and someone I look up to. I'm really hoping that we get some great Jamesisms during this because no one can put it quite like you do. But James, why don't you give us 60 seconds on your background in business. You actually started with a kind of a scrub brush in your hand in cars. I think that's an awesome little element that brings you all the way back. You're a Mustang enthusiast. So why don't you give us, the summary on, where you came from and what you're doing now?
Absolutely. Entrepreneurial DNA. I had my own car cleaning business back in college, and I was interviewing then for an accounting job, and I used to wear a beeper, and beeper went off.
Remember
and
those?
I said, "Listen, I got to end this interview because I got to bring this doctor's car back." So, and the guy was like, "You know what? You have such an entrepreneurial spirit. You're hired." So that was KPMG. I started really as a New York State auditor. I went on to Wall Street at Goldman Sachs, and then found my way into marketing. Started in public relations first, and went to branding with Interbrand and general market advertising with Saatchi and Saatchi. And for many of those years, I was a CFO. So, and like Claude, took a pivot and said, you know what? I think I want to be an operations guy. I always felt I was a much better businessman than I ever was accountant. And somebody took a shot, and I was chief operating officer at Interbrand, then chief operating officer at Saatchi, and then became the CEO of a small mobile media company, publicly traded, and then found my way to Gary's world. And I had not heard or known Gary prior to that. I sat next to his brother AJ at a basketball game 10 years earlier. That's how we met. And he asked me to come on. He said he wanted to build a $500 million independent, international, integrated communications company. And you think, you can help me do it. And I said, yeah, I think I can. So that was 5 years ago. Fast forward, as Claude said, now 800 people, 150 million plus in billing, offices in London, Singapore. And I am president of one of his newest companies called the Sasha Group, servicing small and mid-sized businesses.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a heck of a journey. Washing cars, CEO of a publicly traded company, working with Gary. All that experience, I hope that between Claude and your experience, James, that we can bring some value to all of these people who are on the live stream, and we'll see this content afterwards. So basically, this segment's called the human element because leading people through crisis is a very distinctly human skill set. It is not a balance sheet skill set when it comes to the people side of the business. It's very psychological. It's very emotional. You're dealing with lots of different emotions and personality types coming together in the midst of a ton of uncertainty. So both of you have been leading teams through crisis. So James, I'll start with you. Prior to this, what is, in your mind, the biggest crisis you've led a team through prior to this one?
Oh, God, I shared that I was down at Wall Street working at Goldman Sachs during Black Monday. I was at Interbrand during 9/11. And now here. So I've seen the good that can come out of crisis, but I've also seen the pain that it's caused. And in a leadership position, my job was to really comfort them and let them know that we will find a way out. In a pandemic such as the one that we just experienced with COVID-19. I was sitting on a panel and we were talking about first absorbing and realize that the world has changed. It's different than it was 90 days. Adapting and survival becomes the most important thing. It's not about profits. It's about standing at the end of this thing and you've won. And then it's about attacking, moving a piece of your business to offense because you can't win the game solely on defense,
yep.
Right? If you think about the fact that during pandemics, it's a time to leapfrog your competition with something in an offensive position, right? What do they say? Bike races are won on the hills. Okay, well, you're on a hill, and it's time to separate yourself. in a gap type position from your competition.
Jamesism number one, bike races are won on hills. Ding, I wish we had a tally mark because there's more are going to come.
But remember, they can't be forced. They have to come
I
naturally.
know that wasn't forced. It was completely natural. Thanks for that insight, Claude. I also want to ask you maybe a little different flavor of that question, but the same beginning of it. So, Claude, what is the biggest crisis you've ever had to lead a team through? And also, what is different about this time than whatever you're going to say about the biggest crisis you've ever led through?
Yeah, great. So 9/11 for sure was the biggest crisis.
Were you in New York City?
No, I was in San Francisco, but our main headquarters was in New York City. And so being on the other end of the coast, watching what was happening live, and then really doing my best to provide what I call psychological safety, even though I was not in the office until later on in that week, was my, my MO, 1,000%. And really understanding that what people go through, the level of anxiety and the rapidness of the stages of grief that people go through, and the emotional stages are happening like a fire hose. There's no really containing anything. And so listening is the most important thing that I learned then. And then on a very, very different level, when I was living in London, we had the volcanic ash that covered all of Western Europe for days and days and days. And while that is definitely not a pandemic and nothing like 9/11, it was serious enough in that, London is the central hub.
It's scary. It triggers the same fear mechanism.
Yeah, and when it's similar to what is going on now in the way of you don't hear airplanes flying.
Yep.
And when you are in London and you don't hear an airplane flying, or when you're in New York and there's nothing coming in or out of JFK or LaGuardia, it is eerie.
It's uncertain. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things that Gary says to us all the time, and it's a Garyism, is he is interested in wartime generals. And that's something that he has instilled with James and I since we both came on. It's peacetime is easy.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
a cape.
Right.
It's what goes on in the trenches and the blood, sweat, and tears that both you and your teams are going through. And what kind of general are you going to be is really the question.
That's the truth. So you manage right now, the Vayner organization is spread out across the U.S. and other offices overseas. What are the similar things that people are feeling regardless of where they are? Because I know states are all in different stages of reopening. The city is obviously even different than it is where I am in Syracuse, right? A lot different state of reopening psychologically. But what are some of the similar things that you're seeing people wrestling through, the feelings, the emotions? What are you seeing?
Yeah, the first is anxiety. I mean, it's literally anxiety of what's going to happen to me. Obviously everyone is having to tighten their bootstraps. And so will I have a job? Will I have to be furloughed? These words that are probably not in a youngster's repertoire. And now, the idea of furlough and severance and these types of things. So will I have a job? Will I have enough Wi-Fi to do my job from home?
Yeah.
When am I required to go back into the office in a city where we take public transportation? I don't feel safe taking public transportation. I live with an elderly. So it's really the health and welfare that people are dealing with. And what we know with anxiety is anxiety raises the cortisol levels in our minds and creates underperformance. We don't function well when we're anxious. We don't compute. And so that is without a doubt a general emotional experience that people are having. And I think the other experience now that we're 90 days in is an ability to relax. I know I'm here for a while. I can stay here. I can, whatever.
You're saying that people are starting to feel that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think that because we've been very transparent and pretty quick with our internal communications.
Yep.
Certainly we're not taking anything off the shelf because there is nothing off the shelf. We're creating it. Giving those people back to the peace of mind that I spoke about, even in advertising, of you're here for a while now. And so, get settled, get used to this screen, make sure you take breaks from this screen. Again, your health is more important to us than anything else.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
going to bounce
we're
into James. James, I'm going to hold you for 1 second. I just got to pause to just thank our sponsor for the segment, and then I'm going to come right back to you, James. So remember what you're about to say. Oh, he's wearing the hat. Yes, that's not the sponsor for the segment, but I'm all about the hat. This segment, The Human Element, is brought to you by a company called Draver. Now, Draver is an AI-powered platform transforming automotive logistics. What does that mean? Essentially, they have a network of drivers with different capabilities like CDL, all fully insured and rated by performance. So potential drivers connect via a smartphone app to your business. They move vehicles around at scale for companies doing automotive sales and servicing, manufacturing, rentals, fleets, auctions, literally anything in that ballpark. Draver's logistics as a service platform take the cost and chaos out of moving vehicles around, and we all know that's the name of the game today in automotive, getting vehicles to and from customers. They let you track and manage an operation that's usually just done reactively. You should learn more about them at draver.com. That's DRAIVER.com. Thank you. James, back to you. So we're talking about, do you remember what your thought was, or you want me to set it back up?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say for your audience, it's important to realize that those same people become consumers, right? So
Good insight.
about them as employees, right? So we're going to enter a post-abundance society, and the consumer's psyche will change, and their purchasing patterns will change, and it'll move not only from a wallet, but it'll move to a heart. Okay, it's not going to be, do I have enough money to make this purchase? It's going to be, do I feel good about this purchase I'm about to make? I have the money. It's not about the money anymore, right? So I think that's what's important. That's what we're working with our staff and employees to help them understand as they advise our client base that, as Gary says, doing the right thing is always the right thing, right? We're leaning in on the more do good corporate citizenship. You see this, it couldn't be more echoed than in the last 90 days, of what's happening around. And, you better be honest. You better have the integrity. Don't say what it is that you can't support, and recognize that all eyes are on you. And now, are you going to be business that comes out of this pandemic standing strong, because so many won't, and by default you will be a prosperous business because others fall.
I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, this isn't a segment on marketing, but you of all people have a front row seat to look at some of the biggest brands in the world. As you know, you've been involved with Vayner and running, accounts like Budweiser, really in touch with the common man, really in touch with the hearts and emotions and why people purchase. And it's something in automotive that we're actually experiencing a big shift. It's something that I preach all the time, is building brand, and brand being how someone feels about your company and your product and your service. And it's not as much about price and payment as it is how they feel. Like you said, while it's in hearts, people are more leaning into the heart because they're more in touch with their emotions in this season. I also think that concept of brand is pervasive from a company culture side. So thinking it's like people are showing up and still keeping their head in the game, not just for a paycheck, but because they know there's something tied and connected to their heart. So I want to ask you the question. We'll go James and then back to Claude. What is it, do you think, that people want? So they've even your organization, any organization, they've had a job, they've kept their job there. The working situation and scenario is different, so their needs are different. But what do you think at the core people are looking to their leaders to provide to them?
Well, first of all, people want to be respected for their opinion. They want to know they have a voice at all levels, right? So they don't want to wait 20 years until they get into the boardroom. In all of my experience, 35 plus years working for some of the best companies in the world, Vayner probably does that the best of any that I've seen. Okay. You have a voice. Okay. So that's really important. We've been fortunate on the Sasha side. We've hired through the pandemic. And some of the people who I've hired were gainfully employed in other places. Now we're going to be decoupled to become a virtual employee. Like, think about this. They're saying yes to a company and a group of people who they can't touch or feel, who they're watching through a screen. So, that takes a strong brand. And in the case of Sasha, we've only been around for 18 months. So it's Gary Vaynerchuk.
If you're not familiar, explain. Sasha is a spinoff from Vayner that services small, medium-sized business, while Vayner services, tier 1 brands like Budweiser.
Correct. Yeah. And Gary named the company after his father for legacy purposes. So that's where the Sasha Group comes from. But I've never been more proud of the fact that and as Claude knows, I've shared this with her, the 3 of our last 5 hires have been people of color, and, the other 2 have been female. So we're working hard to diversify while hiring into a pandemic. And the people who are hiring, we're gainfully employed elsewhere. They weren't necessarily furloughed. Not that that's bad or indifferent.
Yep.
But if you didn't have a powerful brand and a culture, and a heritage that they feel good joining, they're doing their homework. They're looking and talking to other people. They're not just taking word for it.
Yep.
And the strong get stronger in times like this.
That's true.
So I'm excited about where VaynerX is going.
We have a few minutes left. Claude, kind of the same question. What do you think that people are looking for in their employment in this scenario? And I have a follow-up question, but what do you think? And what are you spending most of your time trying to provide for people?
Yeah, great question. Transparency of communication, heart. So you care about me. You really give a what of what I'm going through.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. How does transparency of communication actually play out within the organization?
It means we are hearing from our CEO, and that's the most important voice. And then the next tier,
Gotcha.
James, myself, and rapidly, not once in a blue moon. So emails are going out every single week on working from home, on Black Lives Matter, on whatever's going on right now, which is a lot.
Yeah, a little bit.
One of the things I also think is don't micromanage me. And so when James says everyone has a voice, it is true. We believe in autonomy. We believe that anyone and everyone can talk to Gary, talk to me, talk to Jim. It doesn't matter. And, let me breathe. That's so important. We want people that are coming to our company with curiosity, inspiration, fresh ideas, and a willingness to get into the ring with each other and collaborate.
You think everyone's feeling so constricted, right? We have to put a mask on. We're locked in our houses or in apartments. You already feel like you can't breathe. Right, so to provide a little bit of oxygen, right, as an employer, you think that's in short supply. So if you do that, that's a great insight. We're in our last 30 to 45 seconds. Claude, if you can encourage all the leaders and people on a team right now with one thing, what would it be?
Leave your people, your customers, your employees feeling better than when they first came to you.
I love it. It's so simple, but so complex to keep in front of you. But I love it. Thank you, James. Parting word, what would you encourage every leader watching this to do in this time? What would you say?
I'd say don't be afraid to pivot. It's okay. Gary's doing a big series on it's okay to change your mind. And these we're marketing in the now, right? That's what we're talking about at VaynerX. So just be aware of the now. That means everything that's around you, what's happening now, and you may have to pivot your messaging.
That's the final word. James and Claude, I can't thank you enough for investing some of your time into this community. It really is just an expression of your hearts as leaders, and also the Vayner organization as an organization that really values people over everything else. That's why it's on the hat. That's why it's the logo. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Speak soon. Bye.